Well, they certainly have laid out their demands now, and that really is because of the European Parliament elections. The timetables that they've put forward really swing on those elections, which start on the 23rd of May. So if we look at the first option, which the European leaders have put out for Theresa May, this idea of extending Brexit until the 22nd of May, if the withdrawal agreement passes, that means that they'll have the legislation. If the withdrawal agreement passes in the House of Commons next week, they'll have enough time to put that legislation into place, and there'll be an orderly exit with a deal. Now, if that doesn't happen, then there's actually the shorter option that the European leaders are putting out there until April the 12th, and that essentially is if the vote gets voted down, then the UK needs to come back to the European Union and say exactly what's going to happen. That is the way that we could either see potentially no deal, potentially the idea of a much longer extension. Now, why April the 12th? The reason for that is because the policies need to be put in place in the UK to put together the framework for holding European elections, which are coming at the end of May, and that's why they've set that date. It was a mammoth set of talks here in Brussels yesterday, and the result is that Theresa May has to now go back and try and get that withdrawal deal passed through the British Parliament, bearing in mind it's already been hammered twice.
And mammoth talks, as you say, and also quite a heated debate amongst EU leaders to get that agreement passed.
Correct. I mean, yesterday afternoon we were expecting a sort of hour or two potentially to discuss this. It took nearly 8 hours. The EU leaders were not on the same side on this. In fact, Theresa May was meant to be joining their meeting. It was the 27 leaders to start with, but she wasn't invited into dinner in the end. It lasted so long. We know that there's divisions. Take a listen to what the French President Emmanuel Macron had to say about it.
British politicians are incapable of implementing what the people asked them to do. People voted for Brexit, but today we have a situation where the British Parliament is saying we're not voting for the agreement that has been negotiated over the past 2 years, and we vote against all our own proposals. In other words, there's total emptiness. It's a real political and democratic crisis. But this crisis is British. In no way should we become stuck in it. That's why we've given 2 deadlines. We are organised.
Interestingly as well, off the back of those meetings, we heard a slightly humorous moment from the European Council President, Donald Tusk. You might remember a few weeks ago, he said that there was a special place in hell for those who had promoted Brexit and not had the way or the means to implement it. He was asked by a journalist in his press conference last night whether MPs who don't vote for the deal should go to the hell. Him responding by saying, according to the Pope, hell is still empty, which means there's a lot of space. It's important to note that this is a 2-day summit. The leaders are going to be entering here on this red carpet. We've had a couple, the Belgian and the Estonian leaders have already come in. Brussels, although completely taken over by Brexit, they do have other policy issues on the agenda, and today, which they didn't manage to get to yesterday, they'll be looking at the European Union's relationship with China.